If you were an auditor or an investigator responsible for finding waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayers' money in one of the nation's largest school districts, how would you feel if no one ever prosecuted the big dollar crimes involving multi-millions of dollars that you uncovered? Our video blog today features clips from the dedicated auditors and investigators in the Office of Inspector General of the Los Angeles Unified School District. Here is Bob Williams describing what he found during the BB bond investigation. You came to a conclusion. What was it?
Well, the conclusion was that there was almost $600 million that was spent out there on different things that went to the actual contractors as opposed to the projects.
Wow. And so what was the outcome of that?
Well, the outcome basically was nothing. We wrote the report. May have been a little bit of change that took place, but by and large, we've passed 2 more bonds since that point in time, so it didn't appear to have too much effort on that.
Karen Sexton is an investigator with the Office of Inspector General who's been working with the office for several years. Here's one of her cases.
We did a very large investigation several years ago involving the adult schools, and there were classes that were that didn't exist. There were ghost students, there were people that were working double assignments and being paid, so they would work an actual job and then they would have another job at a remote location where we discovered it was impossible to be 2 places at one time.
My goodness, wow. And what was the outcome of that?
The outcome was that they don't work there anymore.
I see. Well, do you know whether there was any prosecution or because of the falsification of records or anything?
Unfortunately, there was no prosecution, but at that time, the head of the adult schools, his contract was not renewed.
We asked her how she felt about the waste, fraud, and abuse and the fact that no one was prosecuted.
Well, it makes you feel like, when is somebody going to take notice and do something about this? Why is it not a priority? Why is this not important?
The Los Angeles Unified School District Inspector General Don Mullinax, who investigated the multi-million-dollar Belmont Learning Center, had established a national reputation while he was uncovering fraud at the Pentagon. He recently resigned from the LAUSD and had this to say about the failure of District Attorney Gil Garcetti and Steve Cooley to prosecute anyone on the Belmont case. The prosecution never seemed to come through. Are you disappointed in that?
Of course. I spent almost 3 years of my life working on that report and the reports afterwards and working on the task force for the district attorney's office. But I do understand that they have to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's something for them to decide and something they have to live with. But I believe our report speaks very clearly about, if not criminal activity, significant mismanagement and waste.
Former Belmont prosecutor Anthony Patchett had sought indictments and a grand jury on the Belmont fraud case, only to be rebuffed by District Attorney Steve Cooley. We asked him, now that Inspector General Don Mullinax is gone, will the LAUSD try to delay appointment of a new Inspector General?
I'm afraid that probably will happen because they realize that having a powerful Inspector General was a thorn in their side. Don Mullinax did an outstanding job. He found still a lot of fraud and corruption. It's just the fact that when he took those cases to the district attorney's office, they chose not to go forward with them. They'll go ahead and they'll prosecute the small crimes under $15,000. But for the other crimes that Mr. Mullinax has found, they still have that blind eye towards that. And I really feel that without Don Mullinax there, that it's going to be business as usual for LAUSD, and nobody is going to have the proper oversight, especially if the Inspector General's office gets watered down.
Then we asked Interim Inspector General Jerry Thornton, who's filling in for Don Mullinax, if he thought there would be support from the school district for his audits and investigations of waste, fraud, and abuse. He had this to say.
If you're looking at lower level employees, if you're looking at people that manage cafeterias and people that do the grounds work. We could do this for the next 15 years and nobody would ever say anything to us. But when you elevate your investigations up into the hierarchy of an organization like this, you're always going to meet resistance. Everybody's for accountability until you hold them accountable.
The LAUSD has appointed prominent people to the well-known bond oversight committees to check on the billions of voter-approved bond funds used by the district. We asked the former Inspector General Don Mullinax, what about the billions of dollars the school district gets from selling the little-known certificates of participation, COPs as they are known, which are non-voter approved long-term indebtedness. Is there any oversight on those bonds? What kind of oversight is there for the expenditure of the certificates of participation, which are non-voter approved public indebtedness?
Very little. The issue there is a way for the district to basically get additional funds without going to the taxpayer by basically asking for a loan, and they pay it back with general funds. And right now the district's COPs are just phenomenal. I think it's maybe up to like $1 billion in liability that they're going to have to pay back over time. In fact, we're still paying off COPs on Belmont, which is just sitting there 60% done, and they're tearing it down to rebuild it. We're still paying back out of general fund money COPs from 6 years ago.
Knowing that the LA Unified School District is about to ask the taxpayers to approve another $4 billion in school bonds, we asked Mr. Thornton, what can you do to protect the taxpayers from the misuse of bond money by the LAUSD?
There'll be language in the bond language which will give us the authority to conduct audits as well as investigations. And we have asked for, and we will get at least $10 to $15 million set aside for this office to conduct those audits and those due diligence investigations. Otherwise, we just, with the resources I have here, we can do it. If the bond passes, it requires the district to provide me, or this office, the funds necessary to conduct the oversight of the expenditure of those funds. If it's in the language itself, if it's in the bond language, somebody down the road can't say, oh, we're taking that $10 million back.
We asked Interim Inspector General Jerry Thornton, is there any hope that the District Attorney Steve Cooley or any other prosecutor will ever prosecute for big dollar crimes?
Haven't had many cases prosecuted. I think we're doing better, and that's one of the outside agencies I'm going to deal better with. I've got 2 cases now with the United States Attorney's Office that they're going to prosecute federally. And I've got 2 or 3 cases with the District Attorney's Office that I believe they're going to prosecute. We're going to take big steps to see if we can make that better with the District Attorney's Office.
We want to hear from you, the viewers. Based upon the reluctance of the elected District Attorney of Los Angeles County to prosecute big dollar crimes in the LA Unified School District, and the comments made by former auditors and investigators on this blog, would you vote to approve another $4 billion bond measure? After hearing the auditors' and investigators' frustrations, are you confident that there are adequate controls, supervision, and enforcement to oversee the billions of bond funds that are used properly? Please vote in our poll. Thank you.